Dr. Kethara's hands shook as she sent the distress signal into space. Her beautiful crystal ship was dying around her. The walls that once glowed with soft blue light now flickered and sparked. Air hissed out through cracks in the hull. She looked at her crew. They were all like her. Tall, thin beings with crystal-like skin that changed colors with their emotions. Right now, they glowed red with fear. Half of them were already gone. Not dead. Something worse. They had been taken over by the things from the old ship. 3 days ago, the peaceful current had found something amazing. An ancient ship floating dead in space. It was old, maybe millions of years old. Dr. Kethara and her team were excited. They were scientists who studied alien life. This could be the discovery of their careers. They brought samples aboard their ship to study. That was their mistake. The samples were not dead. They were sleeping. When they woke up, they began to change everything they touched. They turned metal into living flesh. They turned her crew into something else, something that wasn't Zephyrian anymore. Dr. Kethara watched her assistant, Veltar, walk toward her. But it wasn't really Veltar anymore. Black veins ran under his crystal skin. His eyes were not his own. When he opened his mouth, she could see sharp teeth that had grown there. "The signal must stop," Veltar said, in a voice that sounded wrong. Dr. Kethara ran to the communication room and locked the door behind her. She knew the lock would not hold long. These things were strong. Very strong. She sent her message to every known world in the galaxy. "This is the research ship Peaceful Current. We need help. We found something terrible. It is taking over our ship and our crew. Please, someone help us." Then she waited. The first reply came from the Altarian Council. They were a wise race known for their careful thinking. "We have received your message," they said. The Centauri Collective responded next. They were philosophers and deep thinkers. "Your situation raises many questions," they said. "We must think about whether helping you is the right thing to do. This may take some time." More replies came in. The Vegan Confederacy said they needed to run tests on their computers first. The Andromedan Alliance said they were too far away to help quickly. The Core World said the situation was too dangerous for their peaceful ships. One by one, every major power in the galaxy found reasons not to come. They were afraid. They were worried about their own safety. They had their own people to think about. Dr. Kethara felt her hope dying. The things outside the communication room were breaking through the door. She could hear metal bending and tearing. Soon, they would have her too. Far away, on the edge of known space, Captain Sarah Chen was having a bad day. Her cargo ship, the Broken Arrow, was old and ugly. It was full of people that polite society didn't want around. Former soldiers, criminals, people who had done bad things or seen too much. Chen herself was a veteran of Earth's resource wars. She had scars on her face and hands. She had killed people. She had watched friends die. The nice folks on the civilized worlds didn't want people like her around anymore. "Captain," said her communications officer, a woman named Torres who had been court-martialed for refusing to follow a bad order. "We're picking up a distress signal." Chen looked at the message on her screen. A Zephyrian research ship asking for help. The Zephyrians were good people. They never hurt anyone. They spent their time studying plants and trying to understand the universe better. "Any response from the big powers?" Chen asked. "Nothing helpful," Torres replied. "They're all making excuses." Chen's gunner, Marcus, walked over. He was a big man, with artificial legs and scars from an explosion that had killed his whole squad. "The Zephyrians helped my sister once," he said. "When her colony ship broke down, they fixed it for free. Didn't want anything in return." Chen stared at the star chart. They were carrying medical supplies to a mining colony. People there needed these supplies. But the Zephyrians needed help too, and no one else was coming. She thought about her daughter, living somewhere in civilized space. her daughter who was ashamed of what her mother had become. Who thought Chen was just another violent person from a violent world? Change course, Chen ordered. Set heading for the distress beacon. Ma'am, Torres said quietly. That puts us in the quarantine zone. If we go there, we might not come back. Chen looked around her bridge at her crew of misfits and outcasts. Anyone who wants to stay behind can take a shuttle to the nearest station, she said. No one moved. Then let's go save some scientists, Chen said. And prep the weapons. Whatever got them might not want to let them go. As the broken arrow changed course, Chen sent a message to other human ships in the area. The responses came quickly. The Redemption, crewed by former pirates trying to make up for past crimes. The Ghost Protocol, a ship that officially didn't exist. The Berserker's Lament, carrying enhanced soldiers who were considered too dangerous for normal duty. 7 human ships in total, all heading toward a quarantine zone that the rest of the galaxy was afraid to enter. The civilized worlds watched their sensors in shock. The humans were responding. The violent ones. The ones they called Deathworlders. The ones they tried to pretend didn't exist. Chen didn't care what they thought. Someone needed help, and that was all that mattered. Admiral Thrix sat in his command center, watching the tactical display with growing alarm. 7 human ships were moving toward the quarantine zone. His communication board was lighting up with angry messages from member worlds. Sir, his aide said nervously, the Centauri Collective is demanding to know why we're allowing the humans to respond. They say the humans are almost as dangerous as whatever killed the Zephyrians. Admiral Thrix was a Valdorian, a tall, blue-skinned being known for calm thinking. But right now, he felt anything but calm. The humans made him uncomfortable. They came from a world where everything tried to kill everything else. They had spent their entire history fighting wars and surviving disasters that would destroy most civilized races. Contact the lead human vessel, he ordered. Tell them to turn back. On the bridge of the Broken Arrow, Captain Chen received the message and laughed. It was not a nice sound. Tell the Admiral thanks for the advice, she said to Torres. But we're going anyway. Chen opened a channel to the other human ships that were coming to help. She could see their captains on her screen. Captain Rodriguez of the Redemption, a former pirate with burn scars covering half his face. Captain Singh of the Ghost Protocol, a woman whose eyes had seen too many black operations. Captain Kowalski of the Berserker's Lament, whose crew of enhanced soldiers had been kicked out of regular military service for being too aggressive. This is probably suicide, Chen told them honestly. Whatever killed those Zephyrians is strong enough to take over their whole ship. The galaxy won't help us. Command won't back us up. If we die out there, they'll just say we should have stayed home. My crew voted, Rodriguez said. We're going. We owe some debts that can only be paid by doing the right thing. The Zephyrians never did anything wrong to anyone, Singh added. Someone has to help them. My soldiers are ready, Kowalski said simply. This is what we do. Chen nodded. These were her people. The ones the civilized galaxy was afraid of. The ones who did the dirty work so others could stay clean. As they got closer to the distress beacon, their sensors started picking up the peaceful current. What they saw made even the hardened humans pause. The ship looked wrong. The beautiful crystal hull was covered with black veins that pulsed like a heartbeat. Organic growths had sprouted from the surface, twisting the elegant curves into something predatory. Tentacle-like cables reached out into space, as if the ship was trying to grab something. Jesus Christ, Marcus whispered from his gunner station. What did those things do to that ship? Dr. Kethara's voice came through the communication system one last time. Seeds that grow into star killers. If they reach a populated system, they'll spread to every world. Please, you have to stop them. The transmission ended in screaming. Chen stared at the twisted ship on her screen. Around the galaxy, Billions of beings were watching their sensors, waiting to see what the humans would do. The civilized races had committees and councils and careful procedures for everything. But sometimes there wasn't time for committees. "All ships," Chen said into her communicator, "form attack pattern Delta. We're going in hard and fast." The human ships spread out around the infected vessel. Their weapons were crude by galactic standards. Kinetic cannons that fired metal slugs. Plasma guns that were more brute force than precision. Missiles with explosive warheads that made a lot of noise and destruction. The civilized races had elegant energy weapons that could slice through targets with surgical precision. They had defensive shields that could stop most attacks. They had sophisticated scanners that could analyze any threat. But they weren't here. The humans were. "Remember," Chen told her crew, "we're not trying to capture anything. We're not trying to study it. We're here to kill it before it kills anyone else." The infected ship responded to their approach. Organic weapons erupted from its surface, acid projectiles that could eat through metal, energy parasites that tried to drain their ship's power, and something else. A psychic scream that hit their minds like a hammer. Most civilized races would have been driven insane by that sound. But humans had lived with violence their whole lives. They had learned to keep fighting, even when they were afraid. The battle began. Chen's ship fired its main guns, sending heavy rounds into the infected vessel's hull. The other human ships joined in, creating a storm of weapons fire that lit up space around the peaceful current. The infected ship fought back with weapons that no database had ever recorded. But human weapons were simple and effective. When an acid projectile ate through their armor, they patched it with metal plates. When energy parasites drained their power, they switched to backup systems. When the psychic screaming got too loud, they turned up their music and kept shooting. "Ma'am," Torres called out over the noise of battle, "I'm reading multiple biosignatures inside that ship. Some might still be alive." Chen made her decision. Around the galaxy, the civilized races watched in amazement and horror as the humans did what they always did when faced with a problem. They attacked it head-on with overwhelming violence. It was exactly what the situation needed. The infected ship's defenses started to weaken under the constant assault. But Chen knew they were running out of time. Whatever those things were, they were trying to send something to other star systems. If they succeeded, this nightmare would spread across the galaxy. "Boarding shuttles away," she announced. "Time to end this." Chen's boarding shuttle cut through the infected ship's hull like a can opener. The metal screamed as they tore their way inside. The moment the airlock opened, she knew they were in hell. The corridors that had once been clean and bright were now covered with organic slime. The walls pulsed like they were alive. Veins of black infection ran everywhere, carrying something that glowed sickly green. The air was thick with spores that made her eyes water through her helmet. "Stay together," Chen ordered her team. "Watch your corners. Don't touch anything unless you have to." Her team was small, but deadly. Marcus, with his heavy plasma rifle. Santos, a demolitions expert who could blow up anything. Williams, a medic who had seen every kind of wound imaginable. And Torres, who carried enough ammunition to supply a small army. They moved through the ship carefully. Every step squelched in the organic matter covering the floor. Sometimes, the walls moved on their own, like they were breathing. Strange sounds echoed from deeper inside the ship. Not quite mechanical, not quite animal. "Captain," Williams whispered, "I'm reading life signs up ahead. Faint, but still there." They found the first survivor in what used to be the ship's library. It was a young Zephyrian, barely more than a child. Half of her crystal body was covered with the black infection. But she was still herself, still fighting it. "Help me," she whispered in broken standard. "It hurts. It wants to use me." Santos knelt down beside her, his scarred face gentle despite his reputation as a killer. "We'll get you out of here, kid. Just hold on." But as they tried to lift her, the infection spread faster. The girl screamed as black veins raced across her crystal skin. Her eyes went dark, and when she looked at them again, something else was looking back. "Fresh hosts," she said in a voice that wasn't hers. "The collective welcomes you." Chen put a plasma bolt through the girl's head without hesitation. "Jesus, Captain," Marcus said quietly. "She was just a kid." "She was already gone," Chen replied. "And if we don't stop this thing, a lot more kids are going to die." They pushed deeper into the ship. The infection got worse the further they went. In the crew quarters, they found more survivors who weren't really survivors anymore. People who begged for help with their own voices while their infected bodies tried to kill the rescue team. Each time, Chen made the hard choice. Each plasma bolt was another weight on her soul. They reached the research lab where it all started. Dr. Kethara was there, barely alive. The infection had taken most of her lower body, turning her crystal legs into writhing tentacles. But her mind was still clear. "You came," she whispered. "I knew someone would come." "We're going to get you out of here," Chen said, though she could see it was already too late. "No," Dr. Kethara said firmly. "Listen to me. The specimens we found, they're not from this galaxy. They're scouts for something bigger. Listen to me. They're scouts. Something hungry that lives in the dark between galaxies." She coughed, and black fluid came out of her mouth. "The ship is sending a signal now, calling to its masters. But that's not the worst part. It's also launching spores to 3 different star systems. Each spore will grow into a new beacon. The infection will spread exponentially." "Where are the spores?" Chen asked. "Already launched. But they're still connected to the ship by quantum entanglement. If you destroy the ship while they're connected." She smiled weakly. "You'll take them with you." Santos was already checking his equipment. "I can overload the ship's reactor," he said. "But we need to be connected to those spores when it goes. The blast will have to happen while we're still here." "How long do we have?" Chen asked. Santos looked grim. "About 30 seconds from when I start the sequence." Chen looked at her team. These were people who had been thrown away by society. Criminals, misfits, killers. But they were also heroes, even if no one would ever call them that. "Anyone who wants to leave can go now," she said. "This isn't your fight." Marcus checked his weapon. "Like hell it isn't. My niece lives on Arcturus Prime. One of those systems the spores are heading for. My kids are on Earth," Williams added. "I'm not letting these things reach them." Santos was already working on the reactor controls. "Besides, Captain, someone has to stay and make sure this thing actually blows. Can't do that from a shuttle." Torres activated her communicator. "This is Broken Arrow Team to all ships. We're setting charges to destroy the vessel. All human ships need to withdraw to minimum safe distance. Tenter." The response came from Captain Rodriguez. "Understood, Broken Arrow. It's been an honor serving with you." Around the galaxy, civilized beings watched their sensors as the human fleet pulled back from the infected ship. All except one small shuttle that stayed connected to the hull. Chen's team worked quickly to plant charges throughout the ship's vital systems. The infection fought them every step of the way. Tentacles tried to grab their weapons. Acid dripped from the ceiling. The ship itself seemed to know what they were doing and tried to stop them. But they were humans from Earth, a world that had tried to kill them since birth. They were used to fighting for survival. Santos finished his work on the reactor. "That's it, Captain. 30 seconds when I hit this switch." "Doctor," Kethara grabbed Chen's hand with her remaining crystal fingers. "Thank you," she whispered. "Tell the galaxy that the Zephyrians remember their friends." Chen squeezed the dying scientist's hand. "They'll remember you too." Santos hit the switch. The reactor began to overload, building toward an explosion that would tear apart the ship and anything connected to it. 20 seconds, he announced calmly. The humans stood together in the research lab. facing death with the same determination they had faced everything else in their hard lives. Around them, the infected ship screamed in alien rage as it realized what was happening. 10 seconds, Santos said. It's been good knowing you all. Chen thought of her daughter, somewhere safe in civilized space. Maybe now she would understand that her mother wasn't just a killer. She was a protector. The explosion lit up 3 star systems. The explosion that destroyed the infected ship was so bright it could be seen from orbit around 3 different worlds. The blast tore through space, carrying with it the death screams of alien parasites and the quantum-entangled spores that would have doomed the galaxy. Captain Sarah Chen woke up in a medical bay she didn't recognize. Her body felt like it had been put through a grinder. Burns covered her arms and face. Her hair was gone, burned away by radiation. But she was alive. "Welcome back to the land of the living, Captain," said a voice beside her bed. Chen turned her head carefully and saw Dr. Velnash, an Altarian medic. His crystal skin was glowing soft blue with concern. "My crew?" Chen asked, her voice barely a whisper. "Alive, mostly, Doctor," Velnash replied. "You were very lucky. Your shuttle's emergency systems activated just before the explosion. The blast threw you clear, but you all took heavy radiation exposure." Chen tried to sit up and immediately regretted it. Pain shot through her entire body. "The other ships?" Dr. Velnash's glow dimmed. 4 of the 7 human vessels were destroyed by the psychic shockwave when the parasites died. The Redemption, Ghost Protocol, Berserker's Lament, and Outlaw's Justice. There were no survivors. Chen closed her eyes. Good people. Hard people. But good people. They had died to save a galaxy that feared them. However, Dr. Velnash continued, their sacrifice was not in vain. The spores were destroyed before they could reach their target systems. The infection has been stopped. Over the next few days, as Chen recovered, she learned what had happened after the explosion. The civilized worlds had finally acted, not to fight, but to rescue the surviving humans. Ships from dozens of different species had rushed to the battle site to pull survivors from the wreckage. The same governments that had refused to help with the rescue were now falling over themselves to offer aid to the humans who had saved them. "Captain Chen," said her communications officer, Torres, as she limped into the medical bay on crutches. "You need to see this. We're getting messages from everyone." The list was long. The Altarian Council wanted to give Chen their highest honor for bravery. The Centauri Collective was discussing naming a constellation after the human fleet. The Vegan Confederacy offered to build a memorial to the fallen crews. Even Earth Command was ordering all human vessels to return from frontier duty for a hero's welcome. Chen read the messages in silence. Then she looked up at Torres. "What do you think?" Torres, whose face was bandaged from burns but whose eyes were still sharp, shook her head. "I think they're feeling guilty, ma'am. They let us do their dirty work, and now they want to feel better about it." Chen nodded. "Send the same reply to all of them. Tell them we didn't do this for honors, or medals, or parades. We did it because it needed doing. Tell them if they really want to honor the dead, they can start by not pretending people like us don't exist." Meanwhile, in the deep darkness between galaxies, ancient things stirred. The Devourers had lost their scouts, their carefully planted seeds destroyed by creatures they had not expected to encounter. In a million years of conquest, they had never met a species that would sacrifice itself so readily to protect others. The harvest of this galaxy would have to wait. But they were patient. They had consumed thousands of civilizations across the universe. They could wait a little longer. But now they knew this galaxy had guardians. Violent, unpredictable guardians, who did not think like the peaceful prey species that usually inhabited such places. This would require a different approach. Back in the medical bay, Chen received a personal message that made her hands shake. It was from her daughter, Emma, who lived on one of the core worlds. They hadn't spoken in 5 years, not since Emma had told her mother she was ashamed of what she had become. "Mom," the message began. "I saw the news reports. I know what you did out there. I know what you and your crew sacrificed to save people you've never met. I want you to know that I understand now. I understand why you chose the path you did. You're not a killer, Mom. You're a protector. And I'm proud to be your daughter. Please come home when you can. I want to introduce you to your granddaughter." Chen cried then, for the first time since the explosion. Not from pain, but from relief. Her daughter understood. Finally, someone understood. As she recovered, Chen watched the news feeds from around the galaxy. The civilized worlds were having a crisis of conscience. For centuries, they had built their peaceful societies by pushing the violent elements to the fringes. They had pretended that peace was natural, that it existed because they were morally superior to the crude beings who lived on dangerous worlds. Now they were forced to confront the truth. Their peace existed because people like Chen and her crew stood watch in the dark places, facing threats that would terrify the average citizen. Some accepted this reality better than others. The Zephyrians, grateful for the sacrifice made to avenge their people, quietly began funding human frontier posts. The Altarians started serious discussions about forming a joint defense force with human military advisors. Others, like the Centauri Collective, preferred to think of the incident as an unfortunate exception. They went back to their philosophical debates and careful committees, confident that such threats were rare and manageable through proper diplomatic channels. Chen didn't care what they thought. She had a ship to rebuild and a crew to recruit. Because somewhere out there in the dark, new threats were always emerging. The galaxy needed guardians, whether it wanted to admit it or not. The broken arrow was repaired and upgraded with technology donated by grateful worlds. Chen stood on the bridge, looking out at the stars. Her crew was mostly new faces, more outcasts and misfits, who had volunteered after hearing what happened. "Where to, Captain?" asked her new navigation officer, a former convict named Jackson who had served time for hacking military databases to expose corruption. Chen smiled, her scarred face looking almost peaceful. "Set course for the frontier. We have work to do." The galaxy watched as the human ship disappeared into the darkness between stars, carrying its cargo of necessary violence to places where peace could not survive on its own. 6 months after the battle with the infected ship, the Galactic Union held its most important meeting in centuries. Representatives from 47 different worlds gathered in the great crystal halls of the Altarian homeworld. For the first time in their peaceful history, they were going to officially discuss war. Captain Sarah Chen stood before the assembled delegates, wearing her old military uniform. The burn scars on her face had healed, but they were still visible. She wore them like badges of honor. Behind her stood representatives from other human frontier crews, hard-faced men and women who looked out of place in the elegant surroundings. The Altarian council leader, his crystal form glowing nervous yellow, spoke first. "Captain Chen, we have gathered to discuss the future relationship between the civilized worlds and your people." Chen almost smiled at his careful words. "The ones you don't want in polite society." Uncomfortable silence filled the hall. These beings were used to diplomatic language, careful phrases that avoided unpleasant truths. Chen's bluntness made them nervous. "The recent events have made us realize," said the Centauri representative, "that our peaceful approach to galactic affairs may need adjustment." "You mean you figured out that being nice doesn't work against things that want to eat you?" Chen translated. The vegan delegate, a tall insectoid being, clicked his mandibles in agitation. "Captain, surely you understand that violence should be a last resort. Surely there must be ways to resolve conflicts through negotiation and understanding." Chen turned to look at him directly. "Tell me, delegate, what would you have negotiated with those parasites?" What compromise could you have reached with creatures whose only goal was to turn every living being in the galaxy into more parasites? The delegate had no answer. The human ambassador to the Galactic Union, a diplomatic woman named Carter, tried to smooth things over. What Captain Chen means is that humanity is willing to work with the Union to ensure galactic security through proper channels. No, Chen said firmly. That's not what I mean at all. She stepped forward, her boots clicking on the crystal floor. Around her, the most powerful beings in the galaxy shifted uncomfortably. You want to know what humanity learned from this mess? Chen asked. We learned that the galaxy is full of things that want to kill you. We learned that most of you are too civilized to fight back. We learned that while you're forming committees and having debates, people die. The Zephyrian representative, Dr. Senthara, stood up. She was a survivor of the infected ship, saved by Zephyrian medical technology but forever changed by what she had experienced. Captain Chen speaks truth, she said in her musical voice. My people are grateful beyond measure for human sacrifice. We ask, what do you propose we do? Chen looked around the room at all the elegant beings in their beautiful clothes, living in their peaceful worlds. Keep doing what you're doing, she said. Keep building your art and advancing your science. Keep being the good guys. Someone has to be worth protecting. But, prompted the Altarian Council leader, but stop pretending that peace exists in a vacuum. Stop pretending that your civilization doesn't need guardians. Stop acting like the people who protect you are somehow beneath you. Chen activated a holographic display showing the galaxy's outer rim. Red dots marked human outposts scattered across the frontier. Humanity will maintain bases in the dark spaces between your civilized systems, she announced. Human crews will patrol the places you don't want to go. We'll watch for threats that prefer prey to predators. The room erupted in concerned murmurs. The idea of officially acknowledging human military presence was disturbing to beings who had spent centuries avoiding such realities. And in return, asked the Andromedan representative. Stop pretending we don't exist, Chen said simply. Provide medical care for our wounded, support for our families, and when we die protecting your worlds, remember why we died. The debate that followed lasted 3 days. Some delegates argued that officially recognizing human guardian forces would encourage militarization. Others worried about giving too much autonomy to people they considered dangerous. But in the end, reality won out over idealism. The new Galactic Compact was signed by all 47 member worlds. It officially established the Human Frontier Guard as an independent force, responsible for monitoring and responding to threats from outside civilized space. The civilized worlds would provide funding, medical support, and technological assistance. In return, humanity would ask no questions about internal politics, would not interfere with civilian governments, and would limit their activities to the frontier zones. It wasn't perfect. Many delegates signed the document while holding their noses, uncomfortable with formally acknowledging that their peace depended on human violence. But Dr. Senthara's testimony about what would have happened if the humans hadn't responded had convinced even the most reluctant members. After the signing ceremony, Chen walked through the crystal gardens of the Altarian capital. The beauty here was incredible. Flowers that sang in harmonious tones, trees that grew in mathematical spirals, water that flowed upward in defiance of gravity. Ambassador Carter found her there. You could have handled that more diplomatically, she said. Chen shrugged. Diplomacy is your job. Mine is keeping these people alive long enough to create beautiful things. The other human governments aren't happy with this arrangement, Carter continued. They think you've committed us to a role we didn't ask for. Good thing it's voluntary then, Chen replied. Any human who doesn't want to serve on the frontier doesn't have to. There are always enough volunteers. And there were. Within weeks of the compact's signing, applications flooded in from across human space. Veterans looking for purpose, criminals seeking redemption, outcasts wanting to belong to something bigger than themselves. Chen returned to her rebuilt ship, now officially designated HFG Necessary Evil. Her crew had grown to include beings from other species. A few Zephyrians, who had survived the infection. Some Altarians, who had been exiled for being too aggressive for their society. Even a couple of reformed Centauri, who had gotten tired of endless philosophical debates. "Where to now, Captain?" asked Torres, who had been promoted to first officer. Chen looked at the star charts showing the frontier zones. Dozens of dark areas where no civilized ship dared to go. Places where things lurked that the galaxy didn't want to think about. "There," she said, pointing to a region where their sensors had detected strange energy readings. "Something's out there. Probably nothing good." The Necessary Evil departed from the civilized inner systems, followed by a small fleet of other human ships. Behind them, the galaxy returned to its peaceful pursuits, secure in the knowledge that someone was watching the dark. In her private quarters, Chen read a letter from her daughter Emma. Her granddaughter was walking now, and learning to talk. Emma had named her Sarah, after her grandmother. "Maybe when she's older," Emma had written, "you can tell her about the brave people who keep the monsters away so little girls can sleep safely." Chen smiled and put the letter away. Outside her window, the stars were beautiful and peaceful. Most people in the galaxy would never know how much work it took to keep them that way. And that was exactly how it should be. Far beyond the galactic rim, the ancient devourers felt the new arrangements taking shape. The prey species had learned to keep guardian predators. This would make the harvest much more difficult. But they were patient. They had waited millions of years before. They could wait a little longer while they developed new strategies. The galaxy had bought itself time. How much time would depend on how well its new guardians could adapt to threats that were only beginning to emerge from the dark between stars. Chen and her crew headed into that darkness, ready for whatever came next. Behind them, civilization continued its beautiful, fragile existence, protected by people who would never be thanked enough for the prices they paid. It was a good arrangement. It would have to be enough.